You're not responsible for their emotions. Let's talk about something most people carry silently, the pressure to keep everyone around them happy, even if it costs them their own peace. Maybe you've felt that weight too. Maybe you've spent too long walking on eggshells, shrinking your truth, carrying guilt that was never yours to begin with. Maybe you've been praised for being the strong one, the understanding one, the one who always puts others first. But deep down, you're exhausted, not because you don't care, but because somewhere along the way you forgot that your emotions matter too. This message is for the ones who are done playing emotional tug-of-war with people's moods, for the ones who are tired of being blamed for reactions they didn't cause, for the ones who are finally ready to say, I love you, but I won't carry what isn't mine anymore. If you've ever felt responsible for someone else's anger, guilt, sadness, or silence, this is the moment you take your power back. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll not only feel lighter, you'll understand what it means to care deeply without losing yourself. You'll learn how to protect your peace, set boundaries with love, and stop feeling guilty for simply existing with strength and clarity. You're not the problem. You're not too sensitive. You're not selfish for choosing yourself. You're just waking up, and this time, you're not going back to sleep. Let's begin. People's reactions say more about them than about you. That truth can change your life if you let it. We grow up thinking that we're the reason someone gets upset or cold or distant. We internalize it. We walk away from conversations wondering, what did I do wrong? Even when we know deep down we weren't trying to harm anyone. But here's the thing. Everyone sees the world through their own lens, and that lens is shaped by their past, their fears, their insecurities, their trauma, and their unmet needs. So when someone reacts to you, they're not just reacting to you, they're reacting to their own story. Their emotions are filtered through experiences you may never understand, patterns they've lived with for years, maybe even pain they haven't healed from. You could say something completely neutral and it hits them like an arrow because it touches something tender inside them that was already hurting long before you ever showed up. This is why taking responsibility for how people feel about you becomes exhausting, because no matter how carefully you move, how kindly you speak, how gentle you are, you will still be misunderstood by someone who hasn't yet dealt with what's inside them. That's not your failure, that's human reality. Some people react with anger not because you were wrong, but because they've never learned to process discomfort. Some people get defensive not because you were unfair, but because they were raised to believe that being wrong equals being unloved. Some people pull away not because you hurt them, but because closeness terrifies them more than distance. All of that is not about you. And the moment you understand that, you begin to reclaim your peace. You stop spinning in circles trying to figure out what you could have done differently. You stop twisting yourself into someone you're not just to make others comfortable. You start living from a place of grounded clarity, knowing that while you are responsible for your own integrity, you are not responsible for someone else's interpretation of it. You realize that being misunderstood doesn't always require fixing. Sometimes it just requires release. People will see you through the filter of their own wounds. And that's okay. You can let them. You don't have to bend yourself out of shape for their approval. You just have to keep showing up as someone who's honest, respectful, and self-aware. When you know your heart is clean, when your intentions are clear, then you can let go of the need to control how others receive you, because at the end of the day, their reaction belongs to them. It's part of their journey. It's tied to lessons they have to learn, truths they have to uncover, and healing they have to walk through. Emotional boundaries are not selfish. They're essential. Many of us were taught to believe that being a good person means always being available, always fixing, always softening ourselves for others. We confuse love with self-sacrifice. We believe that if someone is hurting, it's our duty to make them feel better, even if it costs us our own peace. But the truth is, constantly taking responsibility for other people's emotions drains you. It chips away at your clarity, your energy, and your sense of self. You start carrying burdens that were never meant for your shoulders. You begin shrinking just to make room for someone else's emotional outbursts. And over time, you lose touch with your own needs because you're so busy managing theirs. The idea that setting emotional boundaries is rude or cold is one of the most damaging beliefs we carry. A boundary isn't a wall, it's a filter. It's how you protect your well-being without disconnecting from others. It's the line that separates your emotions from theirs, your responsibilities from theirs, your identity from theirs. And without that line, everything gets blurred. You start apologizing for how someone feels. Even when you didn't cause it, you over-explain your decisions just to avoid someone else's anger. You tiptoe through conversations to avoid triggering reactions that aren't even about you. That's not kindness. That's emotional overload, and it's not sustainable. Boundaries are the way you tell the world, I love you, but I also love me. They're how you teach people to treat you with respect. They're how you stay connected without becoming consumed. Because when you constantly absorb someone else's emotional mess, you're not just exhausting yourself, you're also robbing them of the chance to grow. People need to learn how to manage their own reactions, process their own feelings, and face their own discomfort. And they can't do that if you keep jumping in to make everything okay. You can be there for someone without fixing them. You can care without absorbing. You can listen without losing yourself. That's what boundaries allow. They create space for healthy connection, not distance. They give you the strength to say, I see that you're upset, but I'm not going to take that on. And that one sentence, that quiet decision, is sometimes the most loving thing you can do because it allows both of you to stay whole. You're not heartless for protecting your peace. You're not cold for needing emotional space. You're human, and your emotional health matters just as much as anyone else's. When you start honoring that, you stop burning out. You stop resenting people. You start showing up with more presence, more balance, and more clarity because you're no longer drowning in what was never yours to carry in the first place. You can care without carrying. That truth feels simple on the surface, but it's hard to live out when you're someone who feels deeply. When you're the kind of person who listens closely, shows up consistently, and wants to be a safe space for the people you love, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you have to carry the weight of what they're going through. But empathy does not mean emotional absorption. You can sit beside someone in their pain without dragging it into your own heart. You can support someone fully without losing yourself in the process. And you can walk with someone without picking up everything they've dropped along the way. There's a quiet kind of strength in being present without becoming overwhelmed. It means you've learned to hold space instead of holding baggage. It means you've discovered the line between compassion and codependence. When someone you love is upset, hurting, or going through a hard time, your instinct might be to fix it, to say the right thing, to take it all on so they don't have to. But if you're always carrying what belongs to others, there's no room left for your own peace, your own needs, or your own truth. You end up feeling emotionally exhausted and sometimes even resentful without knowing why. It's because you're carrying things you were never meant to hold. It is possible to be deeply kind and deeply grounded at the same time. To say, I'm here with you, without saying, let me take that for you. To offer presence without pressure. When you separate your empathy from their emotions, you stay rooted. You don't get pulled under every time someone around you has a bad day. And that stability, it helps the people around you even more. Because when you're grounded, you offer calm in the chaos. You become the anchor instead of the sponge. You reflect peace instead of mirroring their distress. And sometimes that calm presence is more healing than anything you could ever say or do. Caring doesn't mean you abandon yourself. It means you include yourself. It means you offer help that doesn't harm your own well-being. That kind of care is sustainable It's healthy. It lasts. You get to walk away from heavy conversations without feeling like you just took on someone else's whole world. You get to go to bed at night with a clear heart because you are kind and you're also wise. There is nothing selfish about protecting your own emotional balance while still showing up for others. It's actually one of the most loving things you can do because it means you can keep showing up again and again without breaking down. That's the kind of care that doesn't collapse under pressure. It's strong, it's real, and it makes room for both people to breathe. Guilt is not proof of responsibility. That's a truth a lot of people never hear growing up. Somewhere along the way, many of us started believing that if we feel guilty, it must mean we did something wrong. But emotions are not always reliable indicators of truth. Guilt can be a helpful emotion when it points us toward growth or shows us where we've truly harmed someone, but guilt can also be distorted. It can show up just because someone is upset, and we think it's our job to fix it. It can rise up not because we crossed a line, but because we simply chose a boundary, spoke a truth, or did something for ourselves for once. And when you're someone who's been conditioned to prioritize everyone else's feelings over your own, guilt becomes your default response to any kind of tension. You might feel guilty when you say no. You might feel guilty when you take a break. You might feel guilty when someone else is hurt, even if you weren't the cause of their pain. But feeling guilt doesn't automatically mean you're guilty. It means your inner compass needs clarity. Guilt has a way of clinging to kind people, especially those who care deeply. If you've been a people pleaser for years, then every time you do something that honors your own well-being, that old guilt voice kicks in, whispering that you're selfish, that you're letting someone down, that you could have done more. But ask yourself, is this guilt pointing to something I need to correct? Or is it a leftover echo from a version of me that didn't know I was allowed to have needs too? You don't have to carry guilt for being human. You don't have to hold on to shame for things that aren't your fault. Sometimes people will project their pain onto you. Sometimes they'll blame you because it's easier than facing themselves. Sometimes they'll use guilt as a tool to control or manipulate your choices. But the reaction doesn't define your responsibility. Your role isn't to take on every emotional ripple they throw your way. Your role is to be honest, to be kind, and to stand in integrity with who you are. That's enough. That's more than enough. Letting go of false guilt doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop confusing their discomfort with your duty. It means you check in with your conscience, not your fear of disapproval. It means you remind yourself that you can feel empathy without assuming blame. When you start separating what you feel from what's actually true, everything changes. You stop apologizing for things that aren't yours. You stop bending over backward to avoid someone else's disappointment. And you start living with more freedom because you're no longer tangled in guilt that doesn't belong to you. You begin to trust your own intentions again, and that trust is what sets you free. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. That one truth holds more power than most people realize. Every time you stay silent when someone crosses a line, every time you accept disrespect without speaking up, every time you absorb someone's bad behavior just to avoid conflict, you're teaching them something. You're showing them what's okay. You're giving them a blueprint for how to treat you. And the longer you allow something, the harder it becomes to undo it. Not because you can't, but because people grow comfortable with what you've tolerated. They get used to it. They assume you're fine with it. And unless you interrupt that pattern, they'll continue thinking that their behavior is acceptable. The truth is, boundaries aren't just about what you say, they're about what you do. They're not just drawn with words, they're enforced with action. You can tell someone that you won't accept a certain behavior, but if you keep showing up like nothing's wrong, they'll believe your actions over your words. It's not about being cold or harsh, it's about being clear. When you respect yourself enough to set a boundary and hold it, you're sending a message. I matter too. My peace matters. My voice matters. And the people who truly care about you will adjust. They might not like it at first, especially if they've benefited from your lack of boundaries in the past. But over time, your consistency teaches them what you value and what you won't compromise on anymore. Sometimes people treat you poorly, not because they're bad people, but because you've never shown them where your line is. Maybe you've always smiled through the discomfort, made excuses for their behavior, told yourself to just let it go one more time. But each time you do that, you chip away at your own self-respect, and that inner damage adds up. You start doubting your worth. You start believing that being treated poorly is normal, but it's not. And you don't have to keep living like that. You have the right to shift the dynamic. You have the right to change how the story goes. It starts by deciding what you will and won't allow from this point on. This isn't about punishing people or creating walls. It's about alignment. It's about showing up as someone who knows their value and honors it in every space they walk into. When you hold that kind of standard for yourself, others take notice. Some will rise to meet it, others will fall away, but the right people, the ones meant for your life, will respect the version of you that refuses to be a doormat. You don't have to demand love or loyalty or respect. You just have to stop settling for less than that. And the moment you do, you shift the entire atmosphere around you because people learn from your boundaries, they learn from your silence, and they learn from your stand. You're always teaching them something. Make sure it's a lesson that honors the value you've worked so hard to remember. At the heart of this message is one powerful truth. You are not responsible for how others feel. You are not a puppet master of their moods, nor are you the emotional caretaker for every person who crosses your path. Their reactions, their disappointments, their emotional swings, those belong to them. Your job is to live with honesty, compassion, and integrity, not to twist yourself just to keep everyone else okay. When you start honoring your own boundaries, when you stop absorbing emotions that don't belong to you, and when you finally separate guilt from truth, you free yourself. You start showing up with strength instead of fear, with peace instead of pressure. And in doing that, you teach the world how to treat you with the same respect you've started giving yourself. This journey is not about becoming hardened. It's about becoming whole. You can love people deeply without caring what they refuse to heal. You can care without losing yourself. You can show up fully and still walk away when the weight becomes too heavy to hold. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And it's time you started walking in it. So as you move forward, may you carry only what's yours. May you speak truth with love. May you set boundaries with grace. And may you remember that your emotional freedom is not a gift from others. It's a decision you make every time you choose peace over people-pleasing. Good luck on this path of growth, healing, and self-respect. You deserve the kind of life that doesn't just look good to others, but actually feels good to you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for choosing to rise. Keep going. You've got this.